Welcome back to another reading and correcting with me, Kindar, the Tiger Writes, and Ty, the Tiger Supervisor. These are where I read a chapter from one of my stories and correct it as I go. If you want to listen to these live, it's every Tuesday morning, 8 a.m. Eastern Time on Twitch. And if you are looking to support me, that is on my Patreon. Today we are doing chapter 97 of Breaking Step. Mez took the queens out, except for theirs, which was in the center of the grid, then put them back in. Put them back in. Then put them back in, starting with the oh wow, okay, this is starting by surrounding it with those stamped with a flower and two swords crossed over them. The 8 immediately around it snapped in alignment with the threads around the hole. Okay, I need to specify essence. The essence threads around the hole when he turned them so they were straight in their place. How do you know where they go? Tibs asked, taking the rest and making stacks based on how they were stamped. I've had to study the world's geography, the archer replied. These are Alvilon's queen. He placed the 5 left in his hand, but only one snapped when he turned it. He moved from one hole to the other around those already in place until until each snapped. It's the kingdom in which Kragorok is located. Why do you have to know that? A proper noble must know all his neighbors, Mez recited with a derision in a high-pitched voice. Yeah, I'm not doing that. Tibbs wasn't sure who it was meant. Tibbs wasn't sure who it was meant to be. Not that she knows what it means to be a noble, he added, and Tibbs figured he was talking about his girl. This is the first time any of it's been of use. Hand me those for Mirania. Tibbs looked at the stamps. I don't know which one it is. Those are those with the hammer over a shield. They're Olvillon's neighbor's sunrise ward. If Kragorok is in Olvillon, why does it have a different stamp? The dungeon's eagle, the archer said, as he placed the coins, moving those that didn't snap. Well, that is possible, Don said. It still plays into the fact that because it's a dungeon city, Kragorok is actually part of the kingdom of the Adventurers Guild. A guild can't be a kingdom, Jekyll said. When that guild controls a force able to topple any king it wants, the sorcerer said, it can be whatever it wants. It also simplifies how the other kingdoms deal with it, since it means there will be something resembling a unified mindset across all dungeon cities instead of each guild building each local guild running things as they want. Ah, yes, Komdar said. The kingdom's so well vaunted internal unity. If each guild is as such, then none should be surprised when they encounter their next posting and find that things are done in a completely different manner as to what you have learned here. Spent time among a lot of guilds? Jekyll asked. So innocently the cleric chuckled. No, but I have traveled through many kingdoms, and the unity is only as strong as the king's will to enforce it. Which leads to tyranny, Mez said, taking the stacks with the badger and putting this to the right of Alvilon and Mirania's coins. Indeed, the cleric said. I defer to your experience, Don said. Research tends to be narrow-minded, so the conclusion when studying people tends to be just as narrow-focused. You know what? Narrowly focused. How about I spell this right? Coins with the anchor and setting sun went above and to the left of Alvilon's. Then a forest with an anvil before it made a line along the left coins. Beyond that, were individually stamped coin with a series of coins with waves, and what Maz told him was a ship's helm. When the last coin snapped into place, the door silently opened, revealing a large room with a white so bright it took him a moment to realize there was something wrong. Tibs leaned in and to look left and right. The walls were far enough he should see inside at least 7 offices on each side. He looked into the office next door, and it was still there, with the broken desk and shelves that resulted from Jackal's fight. How is the room larger than what space there is? Don asked. I'm not sure. Can you sense anything out of place? Tibbs vehemently shook his head. He wasn't even risking the chance he'd brush against what was under the building. The sorcerer looked into the room, eyes narrowed against the glare. The property of void as an element would allow for something like this, but I haven't read anything about it being done. Jekyll cracked his fingers, grinning. If there's a boss there's a boss. Okay, that's going to be that's a boss. That's a boss, if I've ever saw one. Tibbs looked into the room again, trying to understand what his friend was. How had he missed the creature that stood in what might be the back, but might be the back? He couldn't tell how deep the room was. It wasn't only how large it was, its blackness marred with the empty whiteness surrounding it. Only on focusing could Tibbs tell it wasn't actually all black. Its head was covered with eyes, and its body was made of patches of dark colors in various simple shapes. Connected with so many strands of black, he could barely make out the gray underneath. How about we figure out if the dungeon has given us an easier way? Don said. Uh, pa, 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 pa. Uh, okay, I don't like this big block. So let's see if I can move that here. Mainly because, this is a response from Dawn to this. So I want it kept close-ish. Tibbs looked into the room again, trying to understand what this friend was. How had he missed a creature that stood at what might be the back? He couldn't tell how deep the room was. How about we figure out if the dungeon has given us an easier way, Don said, before you run in to start the fight. It wasn't only how large it was, its blackness marred the empty whiteness surrounding it. Only by focusing could Tibbs tell it wasn't actually black. Its head was covered with eyes, and its body was made of patches of dark color in various simple shapes. Connected with so many strands of blacks, he could barely make out the gray underneath. I don't see how there's going to be a puzzle, Miss said. The room's basically empty. Tibbs, Comdar? The fighter asked. I'm not trying it from this far, Tibbs replied. There are no secrets in this room that are different from any of the others filling this building. Jackal rubbed his hands. Straight up fight it is. Don blocked his way. This is a dungeon. There's always more to a room than just fighting. Give us time. It's still going to be there if we can't think of something. Jackal raised his hand and stepped back. You think this is the floor boss? You wish, Still replied. I doubt it, Don said. We haven't even explored half the city. My guess is that it's going to be in a place that's entirely obvious, but only after we've worked out the clues leading to it. It won't be at the end of the floor, since this floor doesn't have an end in the traditional sense of the word. He almost got it, and he said, You have to be impressed. No, the them replied flatly. I am wondering if you aren't underestimating them. They made their way to this room with much too fast, and you said they wouldn't work out the puzzle unlocking the door before the door closed, before the exit. Actually, no, you know what? They would work out I don't need the unlocking. Before the door closed. Yeah, I'm going to wait to see what readers have to say about that. I think I can get away with it. How was I supposed to know one of them would know about that geography thing? Stowe replied. They never talked about it before, and I didn't know it was a thing until you showed up and told me about all the people out there and how they gather together. Even their rogue didn't know what the design on the coins was for. It would have been harder still if you hadn't set the coins to adjust themselves when they were nearly aligned. Yeah, yes, I'll grant you that, Stowe admitted. I'll come up with something to replace that before I get to updating this room tonight. Just remove it and be done with it. I do that, and there's no way any of them can solve it, Stowe replied. Isn't it the rule? Isn't it in the rule? Isn't it the rule that every puzzle has to have a solution every member of a team can actually work out? Just get them to try every possibility, the them said. The sorcerer said there's so many of them it can't be done. How about we include braided essences as the way for them to tell how the coins are supposed to be aligned? Kenny offered in a conciliatory tone. We can put one of each element, like with the doorways, and it's going to force them to pay more attention since and we're going and it's going and it will force them to pay more attention since it's going to be the structure of the braid and not just where it passes from the coin to the door that will be the indication it's in the correct slot. Tibbs took a breath and in the stretching silence and stepped into the room. Well? Still demanded. Fine, the them said with enough reluctance. Tibbs wondered if their dislike was aimed at more than just him. For someone who was supposed to be there to make sure Stowe followed the rules, they didn't seem to like having to follow them too. He sensed the floor and space a pace before him, stopping when he was a third of the way in. It's clear to hear, he told the others, and they joined him. The boss creature didn't react to their presence. Is the trigger a threshold or or under the floor and we have to step over it? Jekyll asked. For a boss, Don said, I expect a threshold. Close enough we can prepare, but not so much we'll be able to see every detail. What's the point in not just going at it? Jekyll asked impatiently. There's always a point in preparing, the sorcerer replied. It's to not die, Tibs stated as Jekyll opened his mouth. He closed it inside. You just fought a bunch of golems, Bez said. How can you still be in a hurry to fight? He stopped as everyone stared at him. Never mind. Boss creature, Jekyll fighting the dungeon. How could I ever think he'd get enough of that? But you're still doing it smartly, Tibs stated. You promised Krosef. I'm standing here, aren't I? Jekyll replied, a smile forming. While you're supposed to move ahead to make sure it's safe. He made a shooing motion. Tibbs considered the floor. The smart thing would be to extend his sense as far as the miasma let him. He could shape it, and that would... He thought his shudder was visible to the others. Okay. He couldn't let that paralyze him. He pushed his sense 1 and 3 paces ahead, not sensing anything. Willingly, not to go below this floor. Someone pushes away and did not sense anything. Before the fear stopped him. No threshold, no triggers in the floor yet. Well, tricky. While they were tricky, Stowe and Ganny were also predictable. When a boss room had traps, they were part of the entire floor and became something to deal with as part of fighting it. Stay with me, he instructed. Don's right. It's going to be a threshold, and we should be together when we cross it, in case it causes the walls to come down and divide us, preventing us from helping whoever takes on the boss directly. Don said. Oh! Ganny exclaimed while Tibs glared at the sorcerer. Why didn't we think of that one before? Didn't Don know better than to give them ideas? They were halfway to the boss when the door banged close. Should we have put a block in the doorway? As asked, looking over his shoulder. I thought that would have helped, Jekyll replied. Tibbs grabbed his arm to keep him from rushing off. We crossed your threshold, haven't we? It has yet to move, Kumdar said. Was that always dripping from its finger? Don asked. Tibbs had noticed the black liquid forming a pool on each side of it. Are you sure those things are fingers? Mez asked. They look more like claws to me. No, the nibs of a quill, the sorcerer mused, which makes that ink. That is doubtful, Kumdar said. It will be something it uses against us. Ink, Don whispered, sounding like he was searching. He looked up. A miasma of ink. A what of ink? Jekyll asked while Tibbs stared. It's what my father called it one time after returning from an arduous day of dealing with the city government. They made me fill out so many forms they might as well be drowning me in a miasma of ink. Tibbs studied how they dripped. Those are more ribbons than actual drips. The inky ribbons of bureaucracy, Mess said. I heard one of the nobles say that. Something about never being smothered by them again now that they were in the city free of kings. Maybe that's the theme? Okay, Jekyll said. So don't let them touch me. Any more theorizing you want to do before Tibbs lets me go? He rolled his eyes. Of course I know the word. Karina was using it well before I heard you overuse it. Dawn. I don't over... Theories are what scholars use. He protested. You aren't one yet, Jekyll replied, but get on with it before it reaches us. Tibbs looked at the creature, and Jekyll was right. It took a lumbering step in their direction. Bureaucracy is slow, the sorcerer said. It wraps itself in paper and ink. I don't see paper, but the ribbons are going from patches to patches look like the same thing dripping from its fingers. That could be its armor. Do you think those patches are badges of offices? Mez asked. That or seals, Don said after considering. They might cause a fighter who touches it to be locked in place. Those are applied once everything is done, approved, and can't be changed. How about I stick to hitting its head? Jekyll asked impatiently. It's pretty high, Tibbs said. It had to be twice his friend's height. That won't be a problem. Good luck not having it notice your attack, Don said. All these eyes are there so it can't miss any details. But I don't see how that would protect it, so Jekyll was out of Tibbs' grips and running, his skin turning stone gray. Tibbs sighed. On the bright side, Mez said, we know he's going to survive whatever it throws at him. He'd better, Tibbs said, as Jekyll launched himself in the air, going much higher than Tibbs had ever seen him, well above the boss's creature, fist high and ready to strike once he fell onto its head. Only, Tibbs realized, Jekyll was no longer seemed to fall. Guys? The father called, worried. No, he still fell, but extremely slowly. Don sighed. Right, bureaucracy isn't just slow, it slows everything around it. And that concludes chapter 97 of Breaking Step. If you are enjoying this, please leave a like. If you are looking If you want to know when the next story is going to be up, subscribe and hit the bell. If you want to read the story as well as the other books in the series, they are up on Royal Road for free. If you want to read ahead of Royal Road and support me in the process, that is on my Patreon, where we're about 20 chapters ahead. And if you want to listen to these live, it's every Tuesday morning, 8 a.m. Eastern Time on Twitch. The links are in the notes. And with that, I shall wish you a good day.